Advisory Board looking at rates. Our regular meeting will be on Thursday, whenever that next one is. At any rate, our regular meeting will be in 2 weeks,
20th.
the 20th
20th, I believe.
at 2:30 here. So we start with the roll call.
Larry Porter. Jack Looney.
Here.
Garland Land.
Here.
Joe Zack.
Here.
Mark McDonald.
Here.
Jerry Atkins.
Here, and I'm reporting that Larry Porter is out ill, so he's been sick for the last few days. Okey doke. Jim, if you'll lead us through some information.
All right, so this is the rate presentation that was given to the council at the study session 2 weeks ago or a week ago. So we'll just step through that for you. I think everyone here is well aware we had two different objectives that we were working towards. One is the simplification of the consolidation of our rate schedules to go from the 22 plus different categories down to something little more simple and straightforward. The second objective that we were working toward was the directive from council for a flat 6% discount on everyone's bills. For the last couple of months, the staff working with two different consultants have been working round after round after round after round of trying to figure out how to make those two objectives fit together. We did implement the 6% reduction, so every current ratepayer got a 6% reduction on their bill, and it shows on their statement a 6% reduction. I thought it was interesting. We did get a phone call last week for someone wanting to know what's this rate reduction on my bill and how'd that come from? So obviously not everyone's paying attention, but they did get the 6% and it should be pretty straightforward. The second part of it is where we ran into the complications of trying to figure out how to consolidate and simplify the schedules while at the same time retaining that 6% across the board savings. So as I said, we went in and we've gone through and adjusted our billing system so that it calculates and prints out that 6% savings. What we're proposing is that we start fresh with all new customers on the new rate schedule. And the reason for that is, let's say on our residential side, you've got what I would say your base residential rate, then you've got a discounted rate for a space heater. You got a discounted rate for hot water heater. You got a discounted rate for all electric. There's some other adjustments that are buried in there for blocks of use and that sort of thing. So you've got all these different 5 houses across the block might be paying 5 different rates. And if you're going to consolidate them, the typical practice would be figure out what the average cost is for all of them, and then you set it there. The problem with that is we run into the 6% problem. Someone who had the guy who had the deepest discount that his neighbors were all subsidizing, he would pay a little more, and the guy that's been subsidizing the rest of the block all these years, he would get a break, but it would all come out even. Well, that wasn't one of the directions we could go. We had to give everyone the 6%. So in order to take all those different rates and push them into one, you have a couple of options. One is take the guy with the lowest rate and bring everybody down to him. That way he keeps his 6% and then everyone else comes down. The result of doing that is that some people could see as much as a 15 or 20% discount. We didn't feel that that made a lot of sense. So the solution that they've been working on and working very hard for the last month and a half is trying to figure out how to go in behind the scenes and claw that back, put in adjustments and corrections to correct for those excessive discounts. Another option you could have done would be to look at that overall rate, figure out what the average cost is, set it there, but then you'd still do the same thing, except everyone down here, you'd be calculating credits to bring them up, and the other folks you'd be, again, in a sense, what you would end up with is a page that says we've simplified our rate structure. We now have 5 classes with 9 rates. But behind the scenes, what you've really done is just recreate the same mess you started with. Because by the time you touch every single customer bill to bring them back to that 6%, you've had to, in some cases, maybe even made it more complicated than it was to start with. What we're proposing is that we take all of our current customers, lock them in at that 6% reduction that they already enjoy, and then any new customers coming in would be assigned to this straightforward rate schedule. You can see here, this shows kind of the larger category. On the left, the different rates that we have, some of the different discounts that we have. On the far right would be 4 classes: residential, commercial, industrial, and then municipal. Within those 4 categories, there are still some subclasses, and this is industry norm across utilities across the country. You still use even those that have what we would say is a very basic rate structure. They still have a residential rate and a residential space heating rate, because the folks that are using electric heat, they use a whole lot more electricity than the others. Same thing with commercial. There are still breaks in there for commercial, large commercial, total electric. So we would propose that we keep those. Now, how that would affect the customer right now, I would say if a customer went out and read their own meter, they would still have a hard time trying to figure out what their bill was going to be, because there's so many adjustments and calculations involved. With the new system going forward, what we would see is, okay, a customer charge of $9.17, a summer energy rate, a winter energy rate, the fuel cost adjustment. Our part of our proposal is that we start at 0, and then going forward, we look and see if and when that needs to be adjusted. The pilot charge of 9.08%, and then taxes. They would be able to take their bill, see how much energy they used, and they could actually calculate their own bill. It's that straightforward. For commercial customers, same thing. We would take the existing rates that we currently have, leave them with their 6%, and any new accounts would go to the new structure. And by new account, that's either a brand new customer or if somebody relocates to a different location. And the reason for that is your discount is not based on you individually. Your discount is based on the physical attributes of that location. What qualifies that building for the different categories of use. So if you move to a new location, new account, then that would go into the new rate schedule. On the residential side, or the results for our customers would be that going forward, we would adopt this simpler structure. Is it going to take some time? Sure. There may be a young couple out there that buys the house of their dreams and lives in it for the next 50 years. They would be, if they're already a customer and they're in that house, they would be able to stay with their current rates.
Rate structure.
Rate structure. But we checked with customer service, In 2019 alone, there were over 16,000 new accounts. So I think you're going to see a pretty steady churn from the old structure into the new structure. Over time, we will have less and less people that are in the current rate structure, and more of our customer base would be in this straightforward, simplified rate structure. The numbers here, it's an estimate. We're still looking at the two consultants we were working with. We're still looking at the results they gave us, and seeing how the simplified structure that they proposed, if those numbers will fit with when you bring in this grandfathered piece as well. But this is probably something close to this, but don't make me swear, because these haven't been, we haven't gone through a final review of these numbers yet, but this is probably a ballpark.
Can I ask a quick question?
Sure.
I noticed that your residential rate is 13 cents per kilowatt, and on your other details, it was showing 11 cents and 11.32. Is that because the customer charge is included in that last detail, that 13 cents?
Yeah, this slide here shows the actual usage rate for those kilowatt hours. This here is your all-in average cost for, and again, we have two residential rates.
Mm-hmm.
So this would be an average of those. We've got 3 commercial rates. This number here would be an average of those altogether. Because when we report our rates to EIA or some of those, we end up doing an average across those groups.
But maybe I'm just missing something, because the two rates are 11 cents and then that one's 13. I just don't understand why it would be different. Yeah, go ahead. You got.
Okay, this is Robert. And yes, you're correct. It's because it includes the customer charge in there also. So that's going to raise why the all-in quote rate is higher.
Do we have a detail on what is included in the rationale behind the customer charge?
The customer charge rationale is based upon what was developed through Burns and McDonald, and looking at existing, what our fixed expenses are, for example, for a residential customer, and incorporating how our competitors' or customer rates are. Our fixed costs associated with residential customers is approximately $25 for fixed costs, but we're only proposing around a $10 to $9 customer charge to get something started to establish that as a basis. And in the future, we'll look and see, should we collect more with the customer charge and therefore lower our energy rate to be more of a true energy rate. But the rationale is based upon trying to recover some of our fixed expenses.
Just like your water bills, your gas bills, your cable bills, most utilities, except for the electric industry, over the last 10, 20 years have gone to a fixed customer charge, which captures most of your fixed expenses, your overhead, and then your energy charge is your consumption charge. So most utilities have adopted, and the electric industry is moving to that model as well, so that you can see that to provide you service, it costs about this much, and then the energy you use, and this is the piece that you, the consumer, controls how much energy you use across the month. This is where you can impact your bill.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I realize what you just said is the way the industry has gone. And I haven't argued against this customer charge because I thought it was a very reasonable approach. But I, for one, will be opposed to increasing this customer charge in the future. When we had a higher customer charge proposed in the last discussion a few years ago, which I forget what it was, but it was a much higher. What was it?
I believe it started out at about $9.50 and then went in the first year, then $13.50 the second year, and then like $15 for the third year and beyond.
Yeah. And there were, and that's when the city council got involved and it never went through. And the reason why I'm opposed to that, because it hurts our lower income families, because it creates a charge that they can't control. And for lower income families and those who, and elderly families. And so I just want to go on record that I think that there will be a pushback, as there was at that time. As you recall, there was a major pushback when we went, the proposal was to go to a higher fee. So I think this was a reasonable approach, but I think if we go to a higher charge in the future, I think that the community will be opposed to it.
Point taken.
Two questions. One is, would you go back over this FCA? And the second question is, when we get finished with all of this, are we going to be lower than some of the other surrounding areas? That was the original intent when we started this. That was underlining all of it. We're trying to get industry in here. We need to lower the rate. After all of this study and after all of this stuff, when we get finished, are we going to even be close to that?
Well, one of the impacts of that 6% across the board cut was to get our rates down. These numbers that Burns and McDonnell put together assume that overall 6% cut. So we're not starting fresh. We've incorporated that 6% cut that we already made. That has been incorporated into these numbers, but it's spread across the customer base instead of individual accounts. So yes, we're going to be there in the ballpark with those around us. We'll be competing with them, not be the utility at the top. Now, the FCA, the fuel cost adjustment, or as a better term would be power cost adjustment. When we build our rates, our rates are built based on a forecasted cost of what it's going to cost us to produce the energy, how much our fuel is going to cost. Over time, and like our current rates were set in 2012. So in 2012, our rates were set assuming it's going to cost us this much money to make this much power, and so that's the rate. As fuel costs fluctuate, you don't want to go in and try to change your rates every 6 months or so. So this fuel cost adjustment allows you to make adjustments, either credit or charge for those changing prices. There are months where, for whatever reason, gas and oil prices go up, and there's months where those prices go down. We look at our average costs across that period, and then calculate and that also includes the same charges that we get from our purchase power agreements. They pass on the same power cost adjustments to us for the power that we buy from them, and then so that enables us to instead of try to change the rates every couple of months, the rate stays the same, and we just adjust that cost factor.
Do we speculate and go out 6 months or a year on our fuel purchase, or is that managed by SPP?
The fuel purchases, that's the fuel purchases we make for our combustion turbines. We have a minimum level that we try to maintain so that we have, and I don't recall what it is now, but a certain number of hours of runtime in the fuel tanks. We have in the past, there have been times in the past where we got a call from the distributor saying that, hey, prices have taken a dip, and we'll order 10,000 gallons so that we can take advantage of it. So we do try to do that if we can, but our biggest cost is probably our gas, and we have a contract with the gas company for delivering that, so we don't speculate on gas. We do. Our contract requires us to predict how much we're going to use, and our price is based on that. And if we're off, we can get a penalty for overuse or underuse based on what our nomination was. But for those month-to-month changes, that's what goes into that fuel cost adjustment.
So is this,
So that will reflect on the bill and will show that, or that's an internal?
It'll reflect on the bill. The FCA is published so that you can see what it is. Our proposal, the proposal we've put forward is that we look at this on an annual basis and spread those fluctuations out over a longer period, so it'd be a smaller increment. Council has asked us to consider 6 months or less, so we'll take a look at that. But right now the intention is we set it at 0. We let it float across the whole year, see how the prices have fluctuated, what's our average excess, or in the best of all possible worlds, did our cost come under? And then we would calculate that across the whole year's production and make that adjustment to the customer bills. The fuel cost adjustment, Robert and his staff, they calculate it based on our receipts, and then they'll calculate what the fuel cost adjustment is, and it's a formula. It's not just a magic number that we guess at. There is a formula for how they do that, and then the Power and Light director signs off on that in a memo.
so you gave the example of the turbines. Is that the only fuel that the FCA is based upon, or is it the cost from the other fuels that we buy from the other power sources?
Our FCA includes that's why I said a better term would be power cost adjustment, because it's really the unexpected either increase or decrease in the cost of our power. Iatan, Nebraska City, Dogwood, they all pass on to us the same thing.
Okay.
So it's an accumulation of those.
Jim, I got one other thing about your back to the customer service and a previous comment about there'd be resistance to any increase. Now, it's fixed costs. We should be able to identify what fixed costs really are. If your fixed costs truly go up, then of course your customer charge should go up. Correct?
If it's not being recovered in our energy charge, that would be if we saw a growing disparity.
I'm not talking about your FCA. I'm talking about your customer charge.
Customer charge.
And you said that was fixed costs. So if your fixed costs truly go up, you can identify what the fixed costs are, and you're dividing that out for every one of the customers, right?
Well, no, this doesn't capture
Jim.
all of our fixed costs, but it's an attempt in that direction.
Right.
But go ahead, Robert.
But back when we do a cost of service analysis, we look to see what is the fixed cost, which would include the cost to send people out to read the meters, to have the distribution lines in place, to have the meters available, to have customer service answering the calls, to do the billing and all that stuff that doesn't change no matter how much energy you use.
Right.
You know, those are costs, fixed costs. And that's why I say they cut both. The past 2 cost of service studies have come in, they're around $25. Now, we didn't want to initially start at something so large because it's a large jump. So we started something smaller just to see what it is and to start it in place. We still will have those costs no matter if people use nothing or not, because we still have to have wires to everybody's house. They may not be living there, they may not be using it or whatever, but we still have those costs. And if we could eventually get all of our costs recovered through a customer charge in theory, then that would account for everything. Then everything that people use would be a pure energy charge. Right now, our energy charge is higher than what our energy costs are because we have to pay for those overheads and all that other stuff that we're not recovering all that type of stuff. And back to Garland's question, concern about the cost being high and affecting low-income users. We've done some analysis. Just because you're a low-income user does not mean you're necessarily a low-usage user. It would affect the low-usage customers more than it would the low-income customers, because a lot of the low-income customers we've done aren't necessarily just low usage. A lot of our low-usage customers happen to be vacant houses or people at, apartments are one, so I would say apartments are that. But you also have people that are the term snowbirds or whatever that, you know, during the winter they're not living there; they're just having enough, just a little bit of energy to run their, a few things. So, you know, it is a consideration. We do consider how the charge would affect, low income, and that's what we're trying to do. And I know one of the things is we're trying to increase our donations to the iShare and all that stuff to help some of those low income customers too.
Well, I have a concern when we start talking about arbitrarily setting rates at certain levels. Either it covers the cost or it doesn't cover the cost. We need to come up with some factor that says we're going to cover 50% of it, so because it'll always be arbitrary. You know, $9.17 is pretty arbitrary if you're not basing it on real numbers, right?
Well, what we do is we take into consideration when we develop our rates how much we're going to cover from the customer charge. Just as with commercials, we determine how much we're going to cover from demand charge and stuff, and then the rest goes through the energy charge. So whatever we do, the choosing of the $9.17 or around the $9 cost was based upon establishing something that was also competitive, so that when we compare ourselves to our neighboring competitors, our customer charge isn't, outrageous compared to them. So all those factors get factored in when doing a cost of service rate analysis.
Thanks.
I mean, you are right. We picked a number to start with, and I think the response from our customers would be a lot different if they saw a brand new $25 charge on their bill as opposed to a $9 charge on their bill. So this takes into account their response as well.
All I think we've done as a board is try to make some sense of where the rates are, and at the same time present to the rate committee that hopefully will look over this again to some ideas of what doesn't make sense or what is questionable. But if we're saying we're going to establish a customer charge, it needs to be based on something, and so that an auditor could go back and say, this is where the 917. It should be immaterial on lower income versus higher income, because we represent all the ratepayers. So I just wish we had some logic to it where you come up with the 917. But you've tried to come up with an example, and I appreciate it.
Sure.
Thank you.
Sure.
Do we have any idea when we're going to be finished with this study?
Our target, we're hoping to have the rates actually ready to present the end of this month.
Okay, and that will go to the rate committee, or that's ready for the council, or?
I'll step in on that one. Our goal is to prepare the rates and have them prepared to present to PUAB before we go to council. You may get them similar, or we may ask you to have a special session or something. But our goal is to get the information as soon as possible, so that we can move forward and start actually trying to see how about implementing these.
Hi there. I think the model we've used with some of our other big initiatives, by using the PUAB and the rates committee and then going to council, it's served us well those last few times. And I think that's kind of the path and the process we would want to use again.
Okay.
So we're expecting for this to come back through here within the month,
By the end of this month.
by the end of this month.
Yes, that's our goal.
Okay. Then it would go to the rates committee possibly, and then on to the council?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, we want to get this done too.
Presented, will it also show the tiers, how many kilowatt usage and what it takes to get to the next a lower rate?
What we present will be the rate schedule, so it'll show that, for this tier, you're paid whatever. For example, it'll show what our existing customers and how their rates have changed. And for the new projected customers, a lot of the residentials will be a single tier energy rate. So yes, we'll show you all the different tiers that are there.
Okay. That's what, I think that's going to be very important in the future for us to maybe adjust the tiers more than adjust the rates.
There will be some tiers more on the commercial side. We will still have some tiers. But the residentials, going forward, the new existing, the rates for the new customers going forward will be a single tier. They'll have a customer charge in a single tier.
Yeah. Well, I also want to say I truly appreciate your guys' efforts to grandfather in all those other rates because, you know, speaking as a person that purchased a heat pump and tried to buy as much stuff that had rebates on it, on rates, it's going to be good that you're not just going to arbitrarily take that away from folks. And when they move, then it's on them to just get the one rate. So I do appreciate that. Thank you.
So are you going to be ready for our next regular meeting, or do we need to push our regular meeting back a week?
I would like to say I'll take as much time as I can, but our goal is to try to get it forward as soon as possible. Our goal is to basically next week start preparing. We have the basis of the numbers. What's going to take us a little bit more time is actually writing up the new rate schedules. I mean, developing, how you are. Because one of my goals on that is to clean up the language in our rate schedules to make them more readable, more understandable. Because how they are written now are antiquated and hard to understand. So we're going to be spending some time trying to do that. We should have the numbers all pulled together, next week, and we'll be working on trying to get the actual language and all that stuff cleaned up, because that's our, I want those cleaned up and simplified, because our rates as presented now, it's hard for a person to read it. It's hard to understand.
So you feel comfortable with our next meeting is 2 weeks from today, right?
Yeah.
So you feel comfortable with that, meeting that deadline?
I'm having my assistant city manager look at me and say yes. So yes, our goal is to get that done. So yes,
Okay.
we're working
Now,
to get that.
Understand the same people working on this we also have a competing deadline of getting our budgets for the 2021
I
fiscal
just
year
want to be
in the system.
realistic with our meeting schedule and your deadline. If we need to move back another week.
How about
That's what I was going to suggest, that we go over a month from now, whatever that looks like on the calendar, and that give you an extra 2 weeks.
how about we do this? How about by next Friday, we assess where we are. And if we need additional time outside of the regularly scheduled PUAB meeting, we will submit a request to you and see if we can adjust that next meeting to a time when we'll be ready. Does that sound acceptable?
No. I'm trying to accommodate by giving you an extra 2 weeks, a month from now. However, if you call me on the phone and I have to call all my people, we've gotten into trouble with that in the sunshine law, that we didn't handle that correctly. So I can't call people. I have to have them together.
Okay.
Well, why don't we just move it back 1 week right now?
The regular meeting moved back 1 week.
Yeah.
I think Christina's saying we could take a poll through an email if she sends it out.
Okay.
That would
Yeah. I'd like to
be
get it done as soon as
acceptable
possible.
and above board. I agree.
What's your thought about that?
You're good. Email.
Email? Okay. All right.
Thank you.
I have another question. If somebody sees these rates come out and they find out about the grandfather, and they figure out that if they go to the new rate system or the new structure, can they voluntarily move over to the new rate structure? That makes sense?
Then, in theory, they should be able to do that. Yes.
I'm sorry, what?
Yes, they should be able to do that. If they determine if
Okay.
it's better off and all that
I think
stuff.
that's fair.
It's fair. What we're trying to do is establish the new rate going forward. I mean, it'd be nice to say, no, everybody stays on this and tell it that, but that's not the way we would operate.
Okay.
If I understand right, they currently now have the ability to, I don't want to say select a rate, but if they identify a different rate class that they could qualify for, they can call into customer service and arrange that now, correct?
They do that now, and I get a lot of those requests from, particularly on the commercial side. Am I on the best rate and all that stuff? So yes.
Thanks a lot, guys.
Okay, working toward deadlines though, and Garland, get you in on this and everybody. What is the date then that we're looking at for this either email or get together?
Next Friday. A week from Friday.
Next Friday?
So the 14th.
So next Friday, Valentine's Day, we'll make a judgment call on whether or not we will be ready by the next regularly scheduled PUAB meeting the following Thursday. So we would, by next Friday, we would reach out and say, yes, we're on, or we need another week, and we would request that. That would be the plan.
Well, actually, in that case, couldn't it just be presented at the next PUAB meeting, which would give you guys one additional week, and it'd be a regular meeting for us?
The 20th is our next meeting.
Right.
Yes.
That's
So
what he's saying.
yes, sir. So what we would do is next Friday, the 14th, we would assess where we are with. We're going to work towards having this ready to present on the 20th. If by next Friday we don't feel confident that we'll be ready by the 20th, we would request an additional week or 2 weeks or whatever that is to coincide with a regularly scheduled meeting that can be rescheduled, and then we would present it at that time. But our goal right now would be try to move forward.
Okay, got it. Sure. Thanks.
Thank you.
Jim, you look finished. You finished?
He's
I'm
giving
done.
up. He's taking his toys and he's going home.
That's it.
Okay, anything else from the board members that we have staff here that you want to ask? Seeing none. Anything from staff? Okay.
Sure.
Well, we're adjourned. Thank you very much for being here.
Thank you for the presentation.
Well.